Welcome to Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. Now, it began in uncertainty, political gridlock in Ottawa, a country still reeling from economic tremors and diplomatic tensions with U.S. President Donald Trump once again targeting Canada's sovereignty and trade with blistering rhetoric. Many wondered whether Canada's political center could hold. But by the time the dust settled on election night 2025, the result was nothing short of historic. A dramatic upset, a humbled opposition, and at the center of it all, Prime Minister Mark Carney. Steady, unflappable, and deliberate, Carney led the Liberal Party of Canada to a surprising victory that left some Canadians blinking. The Liberals secured 169 seats, just three shy of a majority in the 343-seat House of Commons. The Conservatives, under leader Pierre Poilievre, came close with 144 seats. But in a shocking twist, Poilievre himself lost his riding to a first-time Liberal candidate, throwing his leadership into immediate question. Now, the Bloc Québécois held on to 22 seats. The New Democratic Party, meanwhile, suffered significant losses across the country, dropping to just 7 seats, the lowest they have ever held since forming a party. Their leader, Jagmeet Singh, also lost his own riding. And for the Green Party, they lost half their caucus and went on to win only a single seat. Now, as Canadians look to what comes next, navigating a new political era, a minority parliament, and rising municipal challenges, one thing is clear. Municipalities will play a pivotal role. And behind the scenes, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is already working to understand the new dynamics in Ottawa and how to collaborate with the incoming Carney government to address the pressing needs of communities across the country. Now, to help us make sense of it all, we reached out to municipal leaders across Canada for their reactions to the 45th general election. We spoke with Tim Tierney first, Ottawa City Councillor and first Vice President of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Vice President Tierney, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the 45th general election, which wrapped up earlier this week. From the Federation of Canadian Municipalities standpoint, what did you take away from the, I would say one night, but it was really 2 nights of election results as they trickled in on Tuesday morning?
I think, obviously, having a prime minister that's officially prime minister now from the city, it would have been regardless if it was a conservative leader or the liberal leader. But either way, it now gives us that opportunity to evaluate the promises that were made during the election and hold everyone's feet to the fire. We're pretty happy with the outcome that we finally have some consistency now, and we can move forward on the other priorities that we have as municipalities across the country.
And one of the big priorities that FCM was talking about during the federal election was housing. Housing, housing, housing. It was mentioned by both Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, and Mark Carney, leader of the Liberal Party, and now Prime Minister designate. For FCM, what are you looking for from Prime Minister Carney to help address the housing challenges within municipalities from coast to coast to coast here in Canada?
Well, you're quite correct. There was many promises made, obviously, and it's all the devil's in the detail. So, of course, with 500,000 new homes a year, with the Build Canada Homes Fund providing $25 billion in financing for prefabricated homes, which is something that's really, we haven't seen this in quite a while. So it's going to be interesting to see what details come with that. And of course, the $10 billion in low cost financing capital for home builders. So I think we have a whole series of tools. Of course, we want to dive into it a little bit more. We'll want to meet with them and discuss what does that look like, because we've heard promises from the Liberal government in the past, but it didn't come with the dedicated money. It was basically, here, we want to provide some housing, but you're going to pay for the infrastructure municipality. I think we have a different situation here, so we look forward to getting some answers to that. And especially, Chris, we're going to be right here in the city of Ottawa for our annual general conference. I'm assuming you're going to come out like usual and grill us very hard. And hopefully we will have the Prime Minister out there speaking to a lot of these promises that were made.
Is there concern? First off, yes, I will be a FCM this year. I'm looking forward to attending. But is there concern with the way that the vote went on Monday/Tuesday, with it being a minority government, that municipal issues may be squeezed out of the conversation? Because we see a lot of conversation going on down south right now with the ongoing trade war. I know FCM has been integral in trying to be part of those ongoing negotiations with our American counterparts. But is there concerns that housing may not take front center stage as we get further into this minority government, or are you optimistic?
I'm extraordinarily optimistic, Chris. I think actually this is the first time I've seen FCM, and I've been a part of FCM for 14 years, where we've actually pivoted a lot on what the priorities of Canadians and municipalities are, whether it's housing, whether it's policing, whether it's infrastructure money, all things that were very different from previous platforms when we were out there lobbying the government, especially during election time. So they have committed to a lot. All parties have, really. But we want to have those conversations and ensure that we actually see the money that comes along with it. You're quite correct also that we do have almost a new arm of FCM. We're trying to get a memorandum of understanding with our National League of Cities counterparts in the United States. They represent 3,000 municipalities. I had the pleasure of speaking down there. They're very engaged. They want to continue the dialogue because over the next 4 years, there may be a president down there that is not in line with municipal priorities, both north and south of the border, and maintaining that relationship will be more critical than ever, and ensuring that the federal government sees the roles of municipalities in those conversations, which they have. They've been re-axing us, I guess you can say, or promoting our platforms and our conversations. We're getting a lot of national press too. I think that's one element that is important is we've taken the bluster out of a lot of the conversations that are taking place at the federal levels on both sides of the border, and we're focused on the actual detail and data. And that's why we're going to be so strong and so important over the next 4 years for sure, with the American president and certainly with the minority government here in Canada over the next two to however long they wish to work together.
If it wasn't busy already, it's going to be a busy few weeks, few months for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Because, like you said, not only do you have your convention at the Rogers Centre in Ottawa later on in May, but also the new government has to come back with a budget. They have to come back with a federal budget. They have to pass that. They also have the G7 summit coming up. What are you looking for from the budget perspective? Because you talk about housing. I know the Federation of Canadian Municipalities released a report in 2024 that outlined that it cost on average $107,000 per house to be in up so to be I want to say added onto the infrastructure line, and that's $107,000 that some municipalities don't have. What are exactly are you looking for from the budget perspective to help municipalities adapt to sort of the changing, aging infrastructure challenges that they have?
You said it right there. I think it's been very clear. Obviously, we can't do it on our own. We certainly have a lot of challenges we've taken on that have never been our responsibility before. So we're glad to take those on. We are the best stewards of the people, but that means we're losing money in another department because the only tool we have, Chris, as you know, and I keep reminding people, is municipal taxes. That being said, I think there is some really good conversations on the affordability front. That was front and center. If you strip out the American component of this whole thing, it was all about that. We've seen carbon pricing come down, which even locally in my area, we've seen that's had a massive impact of $10 million in a few months already. In an inquiry I did with our council from, obviously natural gas for our buildings to our bus fleet and bulk fuel purchases dropping 21 to 26 cents, as well as even propane for our Zambonis, our good Canadian Zambonis, or sorry, ice cleaning products within our arenas. That's good because that means we can start shifting money around to other priorities, but we still have a big deficit. So we need to see upfront what comes along with infrastructure, policing, and as well as housing. And when I say housing, I think we always have to frame that. Is it housing for people that require the housing? That's one arm. which is, typically that used to be provincial, and now we're taking a lot of that burden on. So, if they want to keep going through the provinces, make sure that happens quicker, or again, like what we've done with the gas tax, which is the Canadian Building Fund, give it directly to municipalities. We know how to deal with that money, but it also will have to come. And I did highlight we weren't super happy with the previous announcement of we're going to give housing money, but by the way, you're going to pay for all the servicing that goes into it. That's half the cost of a building. So we need the infrastructure money as well from that perspective.
One of the big key takeaways that I saw during this the election nights as they unfolded was the urban rural divide that is sort of prominent within Canada right now. The Liberals took most of the urban seats, while the Conservatives were left with some urban seats, but also some rural seats as well. How does FCM bridge that gap with the next with the incoming Carney government? Because as the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, you are not just an urban organization, you're also a rural organization. So how do you see yourself playing that role in bridging that relationship between rural Canadian leaders and the next government?
I think, FCM is walking the walk and talking the talk, Chris. As you know, I've been living in a plane for a little while, along with our president, Rebecca Bly, and we've been crossing the country listening to all of our associations, all our members, which are, you're quite correct, a large number of rural. They felt disenfranchised from our federal government in the past, and we want to ensure their voice is heard. So we've made it prominent in all of our discussions, whether it's the tariff talks about potash. Everything that we're doing has a rural element, and the federal government must recognize that, and will continue to push that narrative. You'll see even during our annual conference, we've added a whole bunch of new rural components that we haven't seen before, just to really reflect that. And as the new cabinet comes in, the new budget comes in, the new prime minister comes in, official prime minister now, and as even opposition members, it would behoove them not to take part in this annual conference and speak to municipal elected officials directly on the ground. And they're going to tell them straight up, rural, rural. We need to focus on a lot of the rural. You can't forget about us. So it's good. It's going to be a good engagement. We'll have 3,000 people, municipally elected, mayors and councillors in this city of Ottawa in a month. And at that point, they're going to hear firsthand from ministers, shadow ministers, opposition members, that it's a big component of what we do as an organization.
Final parting words before I let you go, because I know you're busy and you're heading off to a council meeting right before you're doing this. Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, lost his seat. He has resigned as leader of the New Democratic Party. Pierre Poilievre has lost his seat. He has said he's going to try and stay on. Elizabeth May is co-leader. Her other co-leader has left. Mark Carney, you have a relatively new batch of leaders who might be coming to FCM this year. Is it going to be your job as first vice president, and Rebecca Bly's job as president, and Kathy Valentino's job as second vice president to get all these new leaders, all these new MPs, all these new cabinet ministers up to speed on what you have been chatting about over this last election? Or do you think you have a good understanding that the parties understand where municipalities are coming from?
Well, certainly, some of the parties certainly have a great understanding. Even previous to this, we've had many speakers come in and speak with us. They understand how important municipalities are. We're the front door. A lot of people know us, and they might not even know they're MPP/MLAs, or they might not know they're members of parliament. They know us. They know their tax bills. But that being said, we certainly will work with them to make sure that they understand. There's a lot of new blood. You're quite correct, and I do want to say thank you to Jagmeet Singh. Definitely a champion for municipal politics. Same with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Certainly was there. Scott Atchison from the Conservatives did come out and speak with us. I think as we look at the revitalization, it would be very important if they're looking at new leadership, change of leadership, that whoever the leader is sees municipalities as a priority, and not a corporation of the province, but a team player. We need to work together, break down interprovincial trade barriers, and get to work, because it's going to be a long 4 years of Trump.
Okay, I know I said that was my last question, but you know me, I always have my follow-up
I
question.
love it.
Um, I'm a numbers man. I like to look at numbers. And in this upcoming 45th General Parliament, there will be 12% of the elected MPs with prior municipal experience, whether that be mayors currently, mayors past, councillors, reeves. Are you optimistic that municipalities will take front and center stage as these 12% of these 44 members of parliament come sit in the House of Commons starting later on this year?
I love your Rain Man brain. I swear to goodness, you could pull facts out of anywhere, Chris. That is exactly it. I look at those things, and we've seen a lot of people, even some of our colleagues, Jennifer McKelvey from Toronto. She's moved up. She's moved, well, I shouldn't say moved up. Frankly, it's a move to a different level of government because I think we're the top. But that being said, they know the struggles we have. And I think that benefits us in many ways. So those relationships don't shut off immediately. As a matter of fact, I have continued relationships over 15 years of being in politics with people that have gone to different levels of government, and that only helps us. And so I'm happy about that. They can train their newbies that have joined their groups, but we'll work very hard in Ottawa to do the same.
Vice President Tierney, thank you so much for sitting down with me and looking forward to seeing you in Ottawa later on this month. So thank you so
Same
much.
here. We'll save you some karaoke songs, Chris.
We also checked in with Tyler Gandam, President of Alberta Municipalities and Mayor of the City of Wetaskiwin. President Gandam, thank you so much for sitting down with me. We are a few days after the election results of the 45th general election in Canada has played out. Mark Carney is back as Prime Minister, the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. From Alberta Municipalities' perspective, what are you hearing? What did you see? And what are you hopeful for moving into this new era of Canadian unity? I want to say unity, but it's not because we're not in a majority government. We're in a major minority government.
Oh, that's a lot to unpack. I think first and foremost, I'm a relationships kind of person. I want to build a strong relationship with somebody, and I think it makes it really easy later on when there are differences of opinions. You can have those conversations so that people don't have their guards up and aren't being defensive right out of the gate. I think we missed an opportunity here as a province to build the relationship with the interim Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and then after the election, missed an opportunity to put forward what Alberta needs are, how we're going to be best served, and how we're going to be able to best serve our country, our province, and each of the municipalities. And I think going in a more conflict-driven fashion takes away from that ability to, I think, just work together collectively. We don't have to like what each other does. We don't have to agree on the policies or the work that we're going to be doing. No different than what we do with as Alberta municipalities. When there are pieces of legislation introduced or bills that are introduced, we don't come at them sideways. We make it clear on what we think could be improved, how it's going to affect municipalities, some of those unintended consequences, and try to work through that. We're going to debate the policy and not the person. So I think that that's something that maybe we could take away and learn from other experiences, especially with what North America is looking like right now. This Canadian election has definitely divided our nation from coast to coast to coast. And I think it has a real threat of putting and pitting municipalities against each other and all three orders of government.
Now, I am looking at a map and I see a lot of blue and I see a little sprinkling of red and a little less sprinkling of orange. This means that municipalities will have two Liberal MPs in the minority government, Corey Hogan from Calgary Confederation and Elaine, I forget her last name, I apologize right now, from Edmonton Centre. You talk about relationships building. I know your MP is conservative, but are you hoping to be able to sit down with the two new Liberal MPs to start that conversation now rather than 2 years from now when we could be in a potential next election because there's already speculations of when that will be?
Yep, absolutely. So within my riding, we have a good relationship with our member of parliament. I know that Alberta Municipalities, so as a president of Alberta Municipalities, I sit on FCM's board. So we get advocacy days. We meet with MPs from all across the country. And I think it would be a good opportunity for us to also build those relationships with the two Liberal MPs that are going to be serving Alberta and make sure that they are hearing what we need. And I think we have an opportunity as an association and as FCM board members to be able to build those relationships and share why it's so important that Alberta isn't left out of important conversations just because we only have two MP Liberal seats in a Liberal government.
Now, there's a lot to unfold over the next month and a half. You talk about the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which is hosting their convention in Ottawa this year at the end of this month of May. And there has to be a budget passed. There has to be a cabinet sworn in. So, as president of Alberta Municipalities, what are you hoping to hear from the next government as Mark Carney unveils the budget, the cabinet, MPs are sworn in, as he potentially speaks in front of FCM? Is there anything that would perk your ears that would help Alberta municipalities as we move into this new unknown era?
Yeah, I think just recognizing the unique needs we have in Alberta.
And what are they?
I like many Albertans have felt what it's like to maybe not be a priority with the federal government. We talk about access to getting our oil out of our country, the bans on tankers off the coast of BC, whether we're able to build a pipeline to the Hudson's Bay, whether we get a pipeline all the way across Canada, whether we look at refining our own oil, maybe locally. Something that, again, it's easy to look back and say, man, I wish we would have done that 10, 20 years ago. But well, let's look at it right now and see if that's an opportunity for Alberta to be a little bit more self-sufficient, which will also help Canada as a whole. And so I think it was encouraging to hear Prime Minister Carney's speech talking about how there were many millions of Canadians who did not agree with, did not align with the Liberal government or their policies. And it is still his job to serve those Canadians just as it is to serve the Canadians that voted for him and his government. And so if we're going to see a change in the relationships across Canada, I think that those words to start off his term as Prime Minister, we're going to have to see the actions behind it to make sure that those hold true. And I think we have the opportunity. I'm hoping that we get the opportunity to meet with his government in Ottawa next month for FCM's annual convention. But maintaining and building that relationship moving forward. We've had a Liberal government now for almost a decade. And I don't feel like Alberta is getting as much attention as we should be. And do we require a lot of attention, or maybe we just think we require a lot of attention? It doesn't matter. I think the fact is that it's really important that this Prime Minister recognizes the needs of Western Canada as well as Alberta and the impact that we have on our national GDP.
You just spoke about Western alienation, and moments, and I say moments after the election results were announced, there was talk, and there has been talk over the last few days since the election has been solidified, that Alberta wants to separate. They want out. You see that sea of blue. Have you heard anything from your members? Have you heard anything about this that would give you any indication that Alberta truly wants out of a united Canada? Or is this a moment where Mark Carney can actually start addressing some of the concerns that Albertans have?
Directly or specifically from my members, I have not heard other elected officials from our 264 municipalities talk about separating from Canada or becoming the 51st state. I think that emotions are high right now. In the sea of blue across Alberta, it shows very clearly that we were not aligning with the Liberal government. We only elected two in the province. So again, our emotions are really high right now. And this is an opportunity for the Prime Minister to unite Canada from coast to coast to coast. So I don't think separation is even a possibility, even if the majority of Alberta wants it. coming into a referendum or getting a referendum on that where referendum thresholds have been lowered. I think 600,000 people signing a petition to take that to a referendum is a pretty low number to hear what Albertans want in terms of leaving Canada. I think there are far better ways to spend money, resources, and time than to become your own entity or join the United States, which is full of their own issues at this time right now. And jumping from one fire to another is probably not in our best interest.
Last area I want to talk about just quickly, and it is something that was mentioned a lot during the campaign, and that is housing. Now, I know, and you know, that housing is not just a municipal issue; it's a federal, provincial, and a non-government issue. And this prime minister seems to be making housing a priority. Are you optimistic that that will benefit municipalities, whether that be down in Medicine Hat or Wetaskiwin, all the way up to high level?
Yeah, it absolutely will. But a big piece of that and increasing the housing in each of these municipalities is the infrastructure that goes along with it too. So we've been steadily cut on the infrastructure dollars that we're seeing from the province. We've gone from about $420 per Albertan down to about just under $200. It used to be 3% of the provincial budget. Now it's down to about 1% of the provincial budget. So it's really easy to say that we want more homes in our communities, but it also comes at costs with fire halls, police stations, doctors, nurses, hospitals, and that's not even taking into consideration the schools that go along with that too, and then all of the underground infrastructure to service these new lots that are going to be built in these communities. So we're a long way away from having a bunch of new homes to address the housing crisis in Canada, because it's going to start way before all of that and making sure that the infrastructure needs are in place. We've seen a huge increase in our population in Alberta, and I don't think we've kept up with nurses, doctors, teachers, and all of the other things that go along with it as well. And that's not even taking into consideration the social issues we have in our province too, dealing with homelessness and mental health and addictions. So while it's great to see the growth and some prosperity, we also need to address some of the other big problems we have in Canada now before we start adding to it.
President Gandam, always a pleasure. I feel like this is not going to be the last conversation we have about this government as we head into the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So always a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your time.
And for the rural perspective on this election, we caught up with Cara Westerland, President of the Rural Municipalities of Alberta and Councillor for Brazeau County in Alberta. President Westerland, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the 45th general election and the aftermath. The chips have fallen. Mark Carney is back as Prime Minister of Canada, as President of the Rural Municipalities of Alberta. How are you feeling after the, I would say one night, but let's be honest, it was 2 nights of election results, because it took a while for them to count?
Well, we are ready to roll our sleeves up and get to work. I'm hopeful with some of the comments that we've heard from our new Prime Minister. There has been a lot of chatter and a lot of talk about collaboration and cooperation, and that's how we see ourselves. We want to be a part of a team and a part of a partnership, and bring our issues forward and work and focus on finding those solutions.
So what are those problems that you're hoping that the new prime minister will be addressing right off the bat? Because you and I chatted during the campaign, and we talked about oil and gas, because that is pretty prominent in your rural municipalities. But what are the issues that you're hoping that the new prime minister will hopefully be addressing to help municipalities?
The list is long for us, and no doubt about it, and so is everybody else's. But for us, the focus obviously is going to be on infrastructure. We did release our deficit infrastructure report, that $17 billion number that I've been, constantly hounding and pushing out. So that'll be a big issue for us, and trying to figure out how we can partner and work together on reducing that number and getting some projects done. The other piece for us us, obviously, we've heard loud and clear the affordability piece for our residents. Obviously, the provincial and the federal government have a lot more elbow room to do the work there and make a difference. But obviously, it's been trickling down to the municipal level too as well, and we need to get to the table and find some solutions there. You've mentioned it right off the top of the question with the unpaid oil and gas taxes obviously continues to be a big issue for us. But that being said, our industry continues to thrive out here, and we need to make sure that the barriers are removed, and that we can get our product to market from any coast or any avenue that we need to. So that's big. I know we talked oil and gas, but obviously lumber is another big one too, and of course our agricultural industry too as well, and getting their products out to market. So with that being said, we've got a lot of work to do on inter-trade barriers. We sometimes are our own worst enemies. I know a lot of light's been shed on the issues south of the border with the tariffs, but that light can be turned and shone back on ourselves. And there's a lot that we can be doing on our own home turf to removing those barriers and add to our own GDP.
Now, I would be hard pressed to say that in Alberta, where you and I are both from, rural Alberta voted anything but blue. I'm looking at the map and I see blue, blue, blue. But this prime minister has said that making those corridors for energy products to remove those interprovincial barriers would be a priority for him, especially those interprovincial barriers before July 1st of Canada Day of this year. Are you optimistic that this prime minister will be different than the last?
I remain hopeful, but time will tell. Actions speak louder than words in my world, we speak a lot of words in my world, so that tells you where I stand with that one. And I mean that. You know what? Put your money where your mouth is, and actions. I will be watching for actions and not words going forward, and continuing to push that. So, and you are correct. You look at Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's definitely very blue out here. I believe a few seats were picked up by the Liberals. I believe one NDP in Alberta, but you look at those margins, the win margins, like we're talking, some of them were 85%. That sends a very, very clear message to Ottawa where we stand on issues.
So are you hopeful that there can be a cooperation between the Conservatives and the Liberals? Because let's be honest, the last few years, it's been a very combative House of Commons and not much has gotten done. But municipalities can't wait. They are on the front lines and they're the ones who are feeling the economic pressures day in, day out. We are after the election. I know there's a lot of speculation of when the next one will already be. We're not even a week after the election, but are you optimistic that the parties can work together for the betterment of Canada? Because there's a lot that we have to accomplish. And for municipalities, it's a lot that needs to be done yesterday, not tomorrow.
And I want to say I hope so, but I'm beyond I'm hope so. It has to happen. It needs to happen. We can't wait. We have municipalities on the brink of bankruptcy. We have families in the working class, in this country that are truly hurting and just trying to get by, trying to pay their mortgages, trying to put food on the table and find those balances. And, time will tell. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time on a lot of these major issues that are facing Canadians right now. So what I can do and what I offer is I will be a sounding board. I am ready to roll my sleeves up, get to work, sit down at the table, not focus on the past, but focused on the future, where we're going to and how we're going to get to those solutions sooner than later.
One of the actually a few big things that are going to be happening over the next month, because we're recording this on the last few days of April, that there's going to be a federal budget, because there has to be one in the next few weeks, next few months, the return of Parliament, the announcement of cabinet, and one of the big events is FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, is hosting their annual convention in Ottawa, where municipalities will be gathering. What are you hoping to hear from the Prime Minister? What are you hoping to hear from the ministers? What are you hoping to see in the budget as we enter into this first month of this new government?
Well, like I said, I want to see the money where your mouth is, and those promises that you've made on the campaign trail. Trust me, we're going to be watching very, very closely. We will be holding your feet to the fire, and most importantly, asking for that accountability back to the people. Like I said right off the top, we know we are in dire situation with a lot of our infrastructure in our municipalities, the affordability for our residents, even for myself and for you, Chris. I mean, it's top of mind for all of us too. So we will be be watching very closely to see what announcements come out of that budget. And if those things aren't addressed in there, you bet we will not be sitting down quietly. We plan on being in Ottawa for FCM, and there is some talk if we need to get there sooner than we can, and making sure that those doors are being opened and those relationships are being forged as we move forward. So, we have a lot of tough work coming ahead of us, and doubly hard for municipal elected officials in Alberta, because we have a municipal election coming up too in the fall. So not only will we be holding the federal government feet to the fire, we know our own residents are going to be holding our feet to the fire for those of us that are running again too as well.
You talked about the two liberals that were elected in Alberta, and we're talking about from an Alberta perspective. But are you hopeful that you can reach out to those two liberal MPs and start those conversations, because they're the voice in our government from the province of Alberta, and I'm assuming you will want to sit down with them sooner rather than later to start these conversations so they understand where rural municipalities are coming from as well, right?
Absolutely. We will be meeting with them, as we will be meeting with all the as many MPs as we can from Alberta. I believe we do have an NDP in the Edmonton region, and she's no stranger either. She's been around for a while, so we know who she is. She knows who we are. So we will be leaning on those relationships too, and forging the new ones ahead as we work together to continue to build this country and make sure that we're here to prosper in the future. So.
What's next for RMA then? What's next from your perspective as we enter into this new era of Canadian federalism?
We will be pushing hard. We've been slowly and building our case in Ottawa. It's definitely a world for us that we don't normally step into. We've been using FCM in the past to be that sounding board for us, but we have been slowly building and working with other groups. SARM, particularly from Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan Association of Rural Municipalities, and we're going to be looking to build those relationships too. RMA will be no stranger on Parliament Hill. We will be on a first name basis with MPs and ministers as we move forward. So that is something that we've been working on, and we will be pushing that hard as we work into and head into the fall.
President Westerland, always a pleasure to sit down with you. And I'm assuming this will not be the last conversation between now and when everyone ascends upon Ottawa. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do.
We also caught up with Randy Golden, president of the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association and city councillor for the city of Yorkton, Saskatchewan. President Golden, thank you so much for sitting down with me and discussing election night, or I should say election 2 nights, because the counting went on until Tuesday morning, it seemed like, of the 45th general election. From SUMA's perspective, we have a new-ish prime minister and a new minority government. How is the path forward for Saskatchewan's urban municipalities going to be?
Well, and just to respond to your 2-day waiting and seeing and watching all your screens and the intrigue around that, and it didn't disappoint, because it was a full constant that we were sitting on pins and needles, especially if you are so in tuned to to elections and other orders of government. So in SUMA's perspective, as always, we're looking forward to building the relationship with the new government. And anytime that you're seeing a new government coming into power, although we've seen this prime minister for a month or two, it's new. There'll be a new caucus, new ministers. So we are looking forward to continuing our work with the sitting government. Also, and keep in mind, because we work with the opposition parties also. So we're looking to continue that and building our relationship with them, because you can never take anything for granted. You need to continue that.
One of the things that I looked at on Tuesday morning when I woke up was the sea of blue in Saskatchewan is no longer just a sea of blue. It's a sea of blue with a little splash of red, but I guess I should say a large splash of red. And that is Buckley Lange, who is the former MLA, but also mayor of Isle La Crosse. How is it going to be for SUMA to have that Saskatchewan perspective in government moving forward?
Well, it's interesting, because if you look at the map of Saskatchewan, a good half, the upper half is red and the bottom half is blue, even though the upper half is one riding and the bottom half is 12 ridings. And of course, that's population based. So we are looking forward to both having the conversations and the relationship now with MP in waiting, Buckley Belanger. We know him well. He's been a mayor, but he's been on the NDP caucus for many years. A colorful man. I love his stories. So we're looking forward to having those discussions with him, especially around the northern part of our province. And also, let's just continue to say we've had a good relationship with the CPC caucus here in Saskatchewan. Their chair of the day, and I don't know who that might be if he'll continue, is MP Kevin Waugh. So we're looking forward to that too. We meet with them at least several times a year. And one of those MPs has been Fraser Tolmie, former mayor of Moose Jaw. And also he sat on the SUMA board as VP of Cities. So, when we get together to chat, we have so many things to discuss and so many things in common. And that will continue.
Well, you and I chatted during the election, and you talked about the priorities that SUMA was looking for from the next federal government and party leaders. Now, Mark Carney is going to be swearing in a new cabinet, going to be getting back to a potential budget, which they have to pass this year. What are you looking for now? Now that the chips have settled, what is SUMA looking for from Mark Carney and the Liberal minority government?
And those haven't changed, Chris. And they were confirmed also. We've had these discussions with our municipalities, with the mayors and councillors. And in early April, we went out with using Rubicon strategies with polling to the residents at large. So our concerns, our policies, and our focus areas were around, infrastructure, economy, public safety, and community well-being, and that continues to be. So as soon as possible, we will start having those discussions. We know what they said in their campaigns. We know what the official opposition said, what the NDP party said, and we know what was in the Liberal campaign promises, and we will be holding their feet to the fire.
One of the big things that was promised during this election was more housing. Housing seemed to be a big priority for both the Liberals and the Conservatives, but the Liberals came out on top. Housing is a topic of conversation that I had at the SUMA convention just a few weeks ago in Saskatoon. What are you looking for from the housing file when it comes to how the federal government can help municipalities in Saskatchewan address the challenges?
Well, we do have challenges. And that's come from, 20, 25 years of underfunding. And what we are looking for is partnerships in this, as we are in every one of those key focus areas I talked about. We want to be a partner and we want to be consulted. So the housing, whether it's market housing or non-market housing, is key. Because when we're looking at productive communities, employees, workers all need housing. And from our cornerstone, advocacy issue around mental health and addictions, housing is key. We can't go down that road unless people have safe housing, and, everyone talks about it, but we need to start getting commitments. The other thing that's key is when we talk with our federal partners, and I'm going to call them partners, it's an understanding. And Saskatchewan, our largest city is, 260,000 people. And we go down to villages that may have 200 people. And I'm thinking about the village of Torquay. But we all need housing. And the Accelerator Fund was great for the larger cities. But what about some of those smaller areas? My community of Yorkton, we're growing, but when construction people come in or when they're bidding for things, they need housing, and it's market housing or accommodations of some sort. But we're all facing those issues around mental health and addictions.
How
And
important? Oh, no, I
when there's
apologize.
couch surfing and people don't know where they're going to sleep at night, how are we going to have community well-being?
How important is it for this new Liberal government to address housing, but not just in the major urban centers? Because while the Liberals did win one seat, the majority of Saskatchewan did vote blue, and we are seeing a potential shift in urban versus rural conversations right now. How important is it for places like Torquay, like Bigger,
Yeah,
like Moosomin to
yeah.
get housing built, not just in Saskatoon and Regina, but all the province?
And that's interesting because we would look to our affiliate association, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we've really seen them work both for the large cities, but for the rural. And just be clear, the federal level of rural is anything under 100,000 population. So we need to make sure that there's a balance there. We recognize that all communities need housing. And it's just relevant to what your size is. And something that FCM did a year ago now is to determine what the costs are for a municipality to provide the infrastructure for a lot to build housing. And that came in on the average across Canada of $109,000 before people could start building. So that's what it's costing municipalities to put the sewer, the water, the sidewalks, the drainage, all those kind of things, street lighting. So we want to make sure that that's part of it. So there's a lot to think about. But I think if anything happens, we need to be consulted and talked with, not to and not later, but as things are being developed.
I'd be hard pressed to say that Mayor Albertal considers the city of Swift Current rural, but I guess in the federal
Yep.
lens, that's what they consider rural. So that
Yep.
would be
Yeah.
interesting perspective. You talk about the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and now we are recording this about a month away from the gathering of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in downtown Ottawa. Literally a hop, skip, and jump from the House of Commons. Now we don't know if Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister, is going to be speaking, but I would be hard pressed to say the Liberals, Conservatives, the NDP will be there in some form. What are you hoping to take away from that convention? Are you hoping to be able to sit down with a new cabinet minister to talk about these challenges that are going on in Saskatchewan?
Yeah, and whether we're talking about Saskatchewan or Canada, because if you're the province of Saskatchewan or if you're the province of PEI, we have the same issues. We have lower population, but the need is still there. And I know that all governments focus in on the economy and growing the economy and growing, the things that we can bring new funds and new people into our communities. But if we don't have that infrastructure, if we don't have the housing, it's just not going to happen. So we need to work together on that as a country, to be able to say, you need to sit down with us. We need to talk about that. We're willing to be partners. But really, when you take a look at, say, in Saskatchewan, our acts that give us responsibility, housing isn't there. Neither is health. It's just like we have to have a conversation with the federal government to make changes to that Canada Health Act, because the Canada Health Act defines what they need to do for our bodies, our physical health, but there's no definition or any working around mental health. And we need to make sure that that starts having inclusion so that those types of illnesses, and they are illnesses, are accommodated in the Health Act.
I just want to pick up on that for a second before I ask my last question, because mental health and addiction, I know it is a on the forefront of a lot of Saskatchewan municipalities. We heard about it a lot during our time at the SUMA convention. What would be priority one if Mark Carney called Randy Golden up today and said, President Golden, how can we address this in Saskatchewan? What would that be? Is it just more funding, more resources? What is the silver bullet that could help this?
Well, first of all, I would invite him out to Saskatchewan, Chris, because we want him to see, because as you know, he's been in Alberta and spent time at the hockey rinks. And boy, I'd love to have him out in Saskatchewan to share our urbans, but also our 100,000 lakes, to take him a couple things out to lakes fishing and to meet some of our people, to actually have him understand what we see in Saskatchewan. And that what would I say to him? And it's no different than what I would say to our premier, or we need to be at the table. We need to have consultation because there's so many things that happen in a municipality that our federal government, our provincial governments aren't familiar with. Like, as you know, when we see budgets and we get reporting on budgets, they run deficits. We can't. So that's something that's not allowed by act, by legislation for us. So we need to make that very abundant and very clear to them. So yes, just to sit down, to be at the grown-ups table, and talk about the whole funding model. Like, you put together property taxes and what we fund in 1867. And Chris, I sound like a broken record to you, but that's when it was done. And that was Queen Victoria. Well, think where we are now. Like, what is the cost of maintaining a road compared to 1867? And the infrastructure that we need. And I'm going to say to you, and I think you might agree, that, for recreation, that has changed a great deal. So I want to be able to be at the table with him and to be recognized as a order of government and a partner in everything we do in Canada.
I'm going to leave on a very political question, but I think you're ready for it, President Golden. But we are entering into a new Canadian era of the Carney era of Canada, and that means we don't know what that partnership is going to look like. Now, I know FCM, SUMA has been calling for all three levels of government to sit down and talk about the challenges that municipalities are under. It did not happen under Justin Trudeau, the former prime minister. Are you hopeful that Mark Carney will potentially be able to bring the three levels of government together to have that conversation, or are we going to still have this conversation in a year's time?
Well, I'm optimistic, and we need to put that to him. And if you can remember back 2 SUMA conventions ago, you were there when our premier made the commitment that if it happens, he will be there or he will participate. So I'm again going to offer our premier up and say, we're here. We want to have it. In fact, we'll hold it in Saskatchewan. Let's talk. And I think it's incumbent upon him to have those conversations with the people that are willing to have those opportunities to talk, to make what we do in Canada the very best.
President Golden, it is always a pleasure to speak to you. I'm assuming this is not the last time you and I will be speaking before the FCM conference, so I look forward to chatting again.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely be chatting at the FCM conference.
Now in Manitoba, the Association of Manitoba Municipalities released a statement to us on Wednesday, April 30th, regarding the most recent federal election. Quote, the AMM stands ready to work with the new federal government to advance priorities that matter most to Manitoba's municipalities. Our focus remains aligned with the key themes of our recent federal election priorities campaign: modernized funding, responsive development, and public safety. At the same time, we must confront the pressing economic threat posed by unjustified U.S. tariffs, disrupting supply chains, costing jobs, and raising costs for communities. These challenges are significant, but we are committed to working collaboratively to build a stronger Canada, one that recognizes municipalities as essential partners in delivering real solutions. End quote. The statement went on to say, quote, on public safety, we continue to advocate for stronger bail reform and amendments to the criminal code to hold repeat prolific offenders accountable and prevent further tragedies. Municipalities must also be meaningfully consulted before policing changes are introduced, particularly those that could increase local costs, end quotes. They added, quote, we look forward to working with the federal government and MPs from all parties to advance these critical priorities, end quote. Now, we want to thank everyone for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights. To stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube, and follow us on social media. For even more content and learn more about the stories and people we feature on this show and our sister shows, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. Now, your support means the world to us, so share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged. And we want to thank everyone tuning in for our Canada Votes 2025 series. Until next time, we'll be back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs. Till then, everyone.